Common puppy problems. Common problems that you'll come across when you have puppies. I just wanted to take an episode and cover kind of all those things because I get a lot of questions about a lot of the same issues when it comes to younger puppies. So that's what we're going to cover today. Common problems and how we deal with them and treat them here at home. All right, so you're not going to want to miss this episode of Breeders Hack. All right, guys.
I got you right now. What's going on, Bully fam?
What's going on, Bully fam? It's your boy, the educator, the scientist, Mr. Double Muscle Line Bulls, bringing you another episode of Breeders Hack. So today, I just wanted to cover a lot of the common problems we see, like in younger puppies, right? We get a lot of people who ask us questions. A lot of the problems are pretty similar that they come across. So I just figured we'd cover the most common puppy problems that you'll probably come across, right? And how we treat them here at home. So the first usually being like a form of diarrhea. Like a lot of people will contact us and say, hey, my puppy has diarrhea. What can I do for it, right? So for diarrhea, first thing that I usually will try and use, and this is simply just the stuff that we use here. Granted, you should definitely consider going to your vet. What we typically do here at home is the first thing is we'll introduce pumpkin into the puppy's diet. Even if it's a young puppy, even if it's a very young puppy and it's still drinking milk off of its mother, we'll just take a very small amount of pumpkin and actually So one of the first things that we'll do is we'll give the puppy pumpkin. The key thing when you're giving pumpkin to puppies, it's pumpkin puree. It's canned pumpkin, right? You want to look at the ingredients and make sure that it says else other than just, it should just be pumpkin. No additives, no sweeteners, things like that, just pumpkin. We'll add pumpkin, we'll give them a pumpkin, and we'll give it to them a couple times during the day, and it really kind of helps with digestion. It helps binding up their stool and giving them more of a nice, more solid stool. So you can do that, right? The next thing that you can do is, and when they're a little bit bigger like this, you can give them a very, very, very light dose of like Pepto-Bismol at home, right? It'll help with upset stomach and diarrhea. I like the commercial. But yeah, you can give like Pepto-Bismol and that'll help, right? And that oftentimes will help crazy diarrhea and upset stomach. So you can do Pepto-Bismol. Those are all things that you can get at home and use at home. Now, the next two things are going to be, you may need to speak to your vet to get, right? You may need a prescription to get these things. What I suggest is if you do get them, like say you purchase these medications from your vet, just ask if you could buy extra so that then you can have, in case in the future you deal with diarrhea, because if you're breeding dogs, it's pretty likely you can kind of guarantee your butt that you'll come across it again at one point or another. So the first being like metronidazole. When the puppies are a little bit bigger, you can put them on like metronidazole, and that's supposed to help with like diarrhea. So that's one medication that you can get that will help. The next one that we like to use when it comes to like GI issues, you know, bad diarrheas, is Albon. Albon's like a sulfamethoxazole and trimethoprim. It doesn't have to be Albon. It can be any one of those. So like I have a generic version, like this is it here, you know. This one you can actually get, and it's sulfamethoxazole and trimethoprim, and it's a sulfur-based product, and it's oral, and you can just go ahead and give this to the puppies. Yet again, you could give it to them at a very young age. You can give that, I know you could give it to them at a very young age, and we've used that, and it really helps bind up the stool. Those are the things you're usually going to use. Like I said, we'll start with like a pumpkin. We could then we could try like a little bit of Pepto-Bismol. Then at that point, if like those home remedies aren't working, then at that point we may need to use like a medication. Those are generally the medications we're going to use, is like a metronidazole or like an Albon. At that point, usually it clears up. If it doesn't, then at that point we may have to take more drastic measures, but usually using those simple tips and tricks clears up the diet. All right, so the next thing is like we oftentimes see is upper respiratory infections. Like we see that all the time. My DMs, like people ask me about it all the time. Upper respiratory infections. Basically, the puppy having mucus maybe in the nostrils. It may not have mucus in the nostrils, but it's breathing really like heavy. It has like almost like a crackling when it's breathing. You know, it just sounds super congested. That's the best way to word it. The puppy just sounds super congested, like it has a cold. So that's generally an upper respiratory infection. There's a whole slew of ways that the puppies can get that. One of them being, for example, aspiration, where the puppy was either drinking milk or eating mush or eating kibble or drinking water. You know, for example, they simply drank milk, ate kibble, and it went into the lung. Very, very, very frequently with puppies, especially breeders. They see it all the time. We see it, you know, even when you're trying to be careful, a puppy puppy can aspirate when you're not looking. It could aspirate even on the mother. It could have drank the milk perfectly fine, and it just threw up a little bit of milk. And as it threw up the milk, it inhaled real quick, went into the lungs. There's really no way to prevent it. It just kind of happens. It's not the end of the world though. You can easily treat it, right? So a few things. The first thing is, what do you like to do when you're feeling sick, congested, right? Hot showers. No, don't put the puppy in a hot shower. But what I was just gonna say is like hot showers, right? So what you can do is you can take the puppy, well, you could go into the bathroom, turn on the hot water, and get it nice and steamy in there, right? Once it's nice and steamy in there, you let it run for a few minutes, bring the puppy in there with you. You don't need to go into the actual shower, just sit, in the bathroom. That steam is going to help with the puppy's congestion. They're gonna feel like they can breathe a lot better. As well as if you get yourself like a bulb, one of those aspirator bulbs, the suction bulbs, you can sit there and remove a lot of the mucus out of the puppy's nose. If you have a suction machine, this is even better. I mean, this honestly, I don't even really advocate for those suction bulbs. Like, I really like the suction machines that we sell on breedershacks.com with the puppy adapter, and then simply just suction out their nostrils right after you've brought them into the hot steamy shower for 5 to 10 minutes. And just suction all that mucus out. That's gonna help big time, but that's only part of it, right? What you can also do is get a nebulizer. You could put saline in there, and you can do nebulizer treatments a couple times a day. That'll really help with the congestion and the breathing and things like that. You have to get on top of this, and you have to treat this because if you don't, it can turn into pneumonia, and then pneumonia can be fatal, lethal, and can kill puppies. Shower, steamy water, saline, the nebulizer. The next thing that you can do after you tried those things, the next thing that you would want to do regardless, is you would probably want to put the puppy on some antibiotics, just in case. Yet again, you may have to speak to your vet about this. Always try to get more so then you already have at home in case you come across it again. Or, if you're fortunate enough, you have a breeder local to you that you can, maybe buy a bottle from them. I don't know, whatever. But besides the point, the next thing is antibiotics. So typically for upper respiratory infections, what our vet has always prescribed, Clavamox or like azithromycin, right? And those are two antibiotics that are really, really good at dealing with upper respiratory infection. What they're really good at is drying all that moisture. So those antibiotics are really good at drying up the puppy, eliminating a lot of the moisture in the lungs and things like that. Even if you're doing your nebulizer treatments, even if you're doing, your hot steamy showers, you're going to want to put the puppy on more than likely like Clavamox or an azithromycin. Your vet may prescribe something different, but something along those lines, one of those two drugs. Clavamox, and let me rephrase, Clavamox is just the brand. This one isn't Clavamox, this is actually Clavam, but all it is amoxicillin and potassium clavolite. You're going to want to have some type of version of Clavamox available, especially if you're a breeder, and especially if you're going to continue to have puppies. You want to have one of those medications always on standby. Before I have a litter, I make sure I have a bottle of Clavamox or a bottle of azithromycin ready to go, just in case, and you add water to it, and that's what like reconstitutes it, and then it's good for like a week or two. In the powder form, I just keep it in the powder form, and then when I have my litter, I just have it, there ready in case I get a puppy who has an upper respiratory infection. And then at that point, I'll add the water, and then we can start putting the puppy on the medication. But generally, if you catch it early enough, if you're using something like the suction machine, you put the puppy on proper antibiotics, and then you do some treatments, whether it's a nebulizer, whether it's a steamy shower, you'll usually get rid of that upper respiratory infection. And yet again, don't hesitate. See your vet and get their opinion and see what they say. They can give you a lot more insight. But those are typically the things that we've done for upper respiratory infections, and it's helped so much that now, like I said, when we see it, we identify it, we treat it, usually goes away within. So that's upper respiratory infection. So then, like, what I want to say is like the last thing that we see very commonly, unfortunately, is like Parvo, like symptoms of Parvo. Let me rephrase, like symptoms of Parvo, where like the puppies may be like dehydrated, not eating, not drinking, just losing weight very quickly. So when you see something like that, you don't want to play any games. You don't want to take any chances, especially if you're not experienced. You're going to want to go to your vet right away. You can lose that puppy because puppies are very different than adult dogs. And this is something that my mentor always taught me, right? When you see a puppy lose weight, they don't really like get skinny. By the time they get skinny, it's oftentimes too late. And the issue is, compared to an adult dog will get skinny before it can pass on you. A puppy, by the time it's skinny, it's already going to pass. And the reason being is because their bodies are doing two things at once. An adult dog, their body's just trying to maintain. but a puppy's also trying to grow at the same time. So that's why it needs even more nourishment. If the puppy's sick, its body's trying to maintain the weight while also grow, and so on and so forth. And it's a recipe for disaster. You have to be extra vigilant is all I'm basically trying to get at when it comes to younger puppies. So if the puppy's not eating, not drinking, you got a big problem on your hands, and you're gonna wanna work quick. So one of the things that we look at real quick, and I have a video on this, is like how to basically like identify if your puppy's sick or not. We'll look at is like, we'll pinch the back skin, right? And you see how it's snapping back very quickly? That's a snap test. The reason why we do that is so that then we can identify if the puppy's dehydrated or not, right? So I have a video literally where like you take the puppy, right? And another thing we'll check is the capillary response. So we'll check the mouth. I don't know if you guys can see the gum. It's nice and pink. That's what you want. Typically when a puppy's very sick like that, it's probably when a puppy's very sick, it's gonna start to turn gray. It's gonna lose color. It's gonna be discolored, the tongue, all that stuff. So what you can do is a capillary response, right? You can press down and lift up. And if it goes back to pink very quickly, he's good. You know that the puppy's pretty good, probably pretty hydrated, and so on and so forth. So another thing is you can take a puppy's temperature. You know, you can take the puppy's temperature, and the puppy should be somewhere around like 100 to like 103. You know, if the puppy's higher than a 103, say 104, 105, you know, the puppy got a fever. Yet again, you're going to want to act fast. If the puppy's not eating, if you see it's dehydrated, I just showed you some ways on how. If it's losing color, you're gonna want to get your vet's help very quickly. But what we found is usually like if the puppy's like say vomiting a lot, has a lot of diarrhea, isn't drinking, isn't eating, it's usually like signs of like Parvo, you know. And with Parvo, there's multiple ways that you can go about it. There's a new treatment that they sell that if you give it to the puppy early enough, and that's why I want you guys to go watch that video on how to identify if your puppy's sick or not, is because if you catch it early enough, you can give your puppy this special vaccine that your vet can get, and it'll actually like save the puppy from going through the extreme symptoms of Parvo. Now, if it's too late, then it may not like work out for you. So there's other things that you can do, right? Like you can get, like what I would have immediately is like IV bags, something like this, right? An IV bag, right? Have an IV bag. What you can do is take some of this out and do little balls underneath the skin. I have a video on that, subcutaneous fluids. That's gonna help keep your puppy hydrated. Nutrical is another one. I have a thing of Nutrical somewhere laying around. Nutrical is a high calorie paste. If the puppy's not eating, you can put that on the roof of the puppy's mouth, and it'll still help give the puppy calories so it's getting some sort of nourishment. At that point, you may want to put the puppy on a very strong antibiotic. The vet here by us, last time we had dealt a Parvo situation, they had put the puppies on, it was like a mixture of Baytril, Clavamox, which I showed you guys, which are two together, very, 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 very strong combination, as well as a Serenia, which is for vomiting. They put the puppy on, I think it was like 3 different antibiotics. We just stayed vigilant, giving the puppy fluids, trying to feed the puppy whatever we could, and we were able to get through it. If you're not experienced with Parvo, please like see your vet, because the puppy can die if the puppy's vomiting, bad diarrhea, not eating. And what's great about it is they sell a test that you can test to see if the dog has Parvo, Giardia, what it may be. Just go get that test done at your vet and find out. Anyway, those are some of the most common things we probably see with the puppies. I can't really think of anything else off the top of my head, but those are the most biggest questions I get from like other breeders, like, hey, what do you do when you see this? Common 3. So anyway, guys, as always, we hope this information is helpful. Hope it's useful. I'm gonna go play with some puppies right now. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what problems you've come across most commonly when it comes to your puppies, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of Breeders Hacks. All right, guys.